Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our discussion on food transparency. For me, this is a great honor to be here and to be able to share some of my experiences and thinking that we've dealt with in the United States with regard to food transparency. But before I get into that, I'd like to just explore who we have in the audience. Hopefully you can all understand me. But let's have a show of hands who is a teacher. Who's from a school? We have lots of teachers in the audience. Wonderful. As you heard earlier, yesterday we had an opportunity to spend the morning going back to elementary school. And I think my colleague from the United Kingdom and I had a wonderful time sitting with the children, learning about rice balls, learning how the children were understanding the fundamentals of food transparency. Where does my food come from? How is it grown? How can I choose the amount of food, my portion size? What do I do with leftovers and waste? Really, really important lessons. I think the challenge to all of us is how do we take those wonderful lessons that these young children were learning and continue that through the rest of life? How do we use transparency to educate our children so that when they become young adults and middle-aged adults and older adults, they learn those important lessons about how much food to eat, how to control waste, how to respect the environment. And it was truly a wonderful day. For me, the highlight was lunch. We had the opportunity to go downstairs, learn how the food was being cooked. And as somebody who spends their career watching food safety, I was very impressed with the way the chicken and the vegetables and the eggs were being cooked. So top marks on food safety. But what was very exciting was for me to sit at a desk. I could barely fit in, little desk, and it was a little girl's desk, I think, because it was all pink. But we were sitting down at the little desk, and sitting next to me was a young man whose name was Lawrence. And he spoke English. He was 8 years old. And what was evident to me is Lawrence had been up and he'd got his chicken and his rice and his vegetables and his little bowl of soup, and he sat there, and I was engaging him in conversation. What did he like to do? What movies did he like? Well, meanwhile, Lawrence was busily eating his lunch, and he was like, "David, go away, I'm eating my lunch." Well, what was really embarrassing to me was that Lawrence was able to finish his portion. David was not. So when David was done, David had a big pile of rice that he hadn't eaten. And I was expecting the teacher to come over and bang me on the knuckles and say, "David, you should finish up your rice." And you know why that was? It's because Lawrence went and he served himself. He took his portion, and Lawrence knew what he wanted to eat. He could have this much rice, he had a piece of chicken, he had the vegetables, and he was just licking the bone, and the only thing left from his lunch was his bone. That was very, I think, instrumental in understanding how Lawrence got it. Lawrence didn't take too much food. And what we do in the United States is we don't typically pick our own food, or if we do, we take way too much. We are served food. And in our school lunch programs in the United States and in the UK, I know we are served the food. And the end result is we have a lot of waste, we have a lot of obesity, and we disrespect our environment. So before I got into sharing some of my thoughts about trends of food transparency, I wanted to just share that experience with the children. Later on in the day, we went to a farm, and aside from the rain and the mud, we had a wonderful afternoon. And Henry and I had the opportunity to go out in the mud and the dirt with our boots on and dig up a taro root. And again, that was just a fantastic experience of learning how in Taiwan you are taking your children and you are educating them on the fundamentals of food transparency right from the beginning. The fact that so many people are in this room demonstrates to me this is an important issue for all of you. Transparency, respecting the environment, food safety, managing all of these things. How can we learn from each other? And our goal at the Full Food Foundation is to take all these lessons. And as Mr. Yao said, we're not the government. We can do what we want, but we want to be constructive. We want to take global learnings and apply them to improving life in Taiwan. And all of your input and enthusiasm is part of what's going to help us get there. So we're looking for ideas as much as we're here to share thoughts. So what I want to do in the next half hour or so is talk a little bit around managing risks. When we think about transparency, we can think about it in relation to the food industry and consumers. Consumers want transparency, but what does transparency mean? What do they really want when it comes to food? We'll get into that in just a second. But from a manufacturer's perspective, an organization that makes food or grows food, serves food, they're trying to manage a whole range of risks. Some of them are operational risks, what's going on in their manufacturing environment. It could be food safety, food quality, labeling, sourcing, supply chain. They have to deal with regulatory risks. They have to make sure that they are following the rules. And increasingly, reputational risk. And this is where transparency starts to come in. Consumers want more transparency. They want to know more about where their food is coming from, what's in their food. Is it healthy food? Is it unhealthy food? And part of what I'm going to talk about is the challenge that we have in North America with transparency and some of the tools that we've tried to use to address that. So as we talk about risk management, we need to talk about managing it in the context of industry and the general public around the reputational risk. How do we bring that transparency to consumers for production and for consumption? And most importantly, and one of our biggest challenges, how do we communicate that message between food suppliers, manufacturers, and consumers as we work our way down the supply chain? The food industry, which I work with a great deal, is constantly challenged. Consumers want transparency. They want to know what is in their food, but they also want constant innovation. Consumers want new flavors, they want new ingredients, they want interesting things sourced from other parts of the world which they typically haven't had before. They want low cost, they want low risk, and they want excitement. So in today's environment, our challenges get greater, yet we need to maintain costs. So we've got economic pressures. Food companies are driven towards continued growth. We've got new regulations. We've got global supply chains. So in this context, when we as a consumer pick up a pack of food or a prepared salad and we say, where did it come from? What's in it? Because of all these challenges, it's getting increasingly difficult for a manufacturer to be able to provide that information with total insight. Simple graphic of a supply chain which just illustrates what I'm talking about. This is looking at it from the side of the manufacturer or the restaurant. Just imagine that you are a manufacturer or a grower or a restaurant, and you are in that little blue box. You have customers, and over here, these may be consumers. You have suppliers. You know a lot about your first level of suppliers, what we call Tier 1 suppliers. As you move further across into Tier 2 suppliers, Tier 3 suppliers, and raw material suppliers, you know less and less and less. And over here, our customers or our consumers are picking up the food and they're saying, Where did it come from? What's in it? Is it organic? Was it grown locally? And you here know a great deal about this layer, but as it gets further out, it gets more and more and more difficult. So I'm looking at, initially, transparency from a manufacturing perspective, and some of the challenges related to that. When it comes to risks in food, which consumers worry about, drug residues, pesticides, heavy metals, new bacteria, antibiotic resistance, and increasingly in North America, and a little bit more in Taiwan than in the past, allergens, all of these questions, all that relate to safety of the food. Now, let's switch over and talk about consumers. One of our challenges in North America is the consumer's view of science. I started my career as a scientist. Lots of people in the food industry start their career as scientists, food safety scientists, or wherever they may be from. And unfortunately, we are challenged with the notion that in the old days, we always used to say, well, let's look at what the science says. Let's let the science determine whether there's a risk. Unfortunately, now consumers are saying, well, we don't believe the science. The science was done by the food industry, therefore it's wrong. It's got to be biased. Or the science was done by a non-profit organization or a university, but it was paid for by the food industry. Therefore, it must be wrong. Now, that doesn't follow at all. It doesn't track. And one of the challenges that we face with the food industry and consumers is that consumers believe generally that the food industry is there simply to make money and don't care about your health and welfare. In my experience with working many, many food companies, that's simply not the case. They want to do it right because they want to sell food. So unfortunately, whatever the science says, consumers will say, we don't believe that. We don't trust it. So that's one of our challenges around transparency. There is an enormous move in North America towards clean labels. Now, what do I mean by that? Is consumers are picking up food, processed food, packaged food, and they are looking at the label. And they are looking at the list of ingredients. And they are simply counting how many ingredients are there on the label. Is it 5? Is it 20? Is it 50? The more ingredients on the label, the less confidence that the consumer has that that is a healthy food. So what is happening, and this is mainly at restaurants and at retail, is consumers are demanding clean labels. They're saying, get the preservatives out of food. Take the preservatives out. Take the chemicals out. Reduce the numbers of ingredients. Which is okay, but many of those preservatives are in there for a good reason. They're in there to stop the food going bad. They're in there to prevent us getting diseases that we got 50 years ago before we understood about preservatives. So as we're driving towards transparency, consumers are saying, clean up the label. Get those ingredients out that are long words, they sound like a chemical, get them out. The risk there is that we turn the clock back and we create risks that these preservatives are designed to control. Social media obviously is a huge challenge both in North America and Taiwan and all over the world. We see challenges with social media where messages go out. They're not based on science. They're not based on anything other than just somebody deciding they're on a mission to make a statement. How do we manage that? When we're trying to be transparent and scientific and honest And social media come out with a story to say, this food is dangerous. Well, as I said with my first point, we don't need the science. The science is irrelevant. This ingredient is dangerous. This ingredient will cause harm. Gets into social media, panic by consumers. We had a situation in the United States about 2 years ago, which was a great example of this. There is a chemical that has been used in the baking industry for years. It's called azocarbamide. It sounds very chemically. And I don't know how azocarbamide came over in the translation, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. The point was that azocarbamide has been used in the baking industry to help bread rise. There's been lots of studies to show that azocarbamide is not harmful at the levels that it's used. Well, somebody in the United States did some research on azocarbamide, and they found that this particular chemical is used in the rubber that makes yoga mats. Yoga mats, or any yoga? Right. So azocarbamide is used as a chemical in yoga mats. So the story in social media was, your bread have got pieces of yoga mats. And of course, consumers went crazy. So what do you mean there's yoga mats in my bread? The end result was the major bakery chains, within a matter of days, took the chemical out. They just removed it. Then they had to find something else that would do the job. It was a chemical that wasn't part of yoga mats, but the danger is that we take things out of food which are doing a good job and are known to be safe, and we replace them with something we don't know as much about. It sounds okay. There isn't the science to say it's a risk, but we really don't know. So as we drive towards change, sometimes we get too fast, and social media can have a big part of driving that. So what are consumers' expectations? I think in Taiwan, the United States, we want to have all kinds of food there all the time. We don't want any of our food to be unsafe. We have no tolerance for that. The responsibility is entirely on the manufacturer or who we buy the food from. We want local food. We want unprocessed food. We want their labels to be clean. And yet, when consumers decide that a particular food or an item is a problem, then they have incredible power through social media to damage a brand. So what are some of the causes of trouble? Where do manufacturers get into trouble? Supply chain failures is the biggest one. When a supply chain, you've got your label, it's clean, and then inadvertently somebody in that complicated supply chain that I showed you makes a mistake, does something different, and you don't even know about it. But at the end, somebody tests the food and they find something that shouldn't be there. Labeling mistakes, environmental contamination, ready-to-eat foods. These are some of the major challenges. So as we look at managing risk, assessing risk, prioritizing risk, managing risks, where we need to go with regard to risks and transparency is moving from being reactive to proactive. How can we get out in front? How can we make these changes? Looking at our operational risks, our regulatory risks, and our reputational risks, how can we protect our brand? Again, looking at it from the food industry perspective. But a lot of our focus with transparency isn't just on the food industry, although they have to deliver. And that's why I've spent time talking about the challenges for the food industry. However much we as consumers want information, it's all built on what the manufacturers can provide. But consumers have questions, obviously. What's transparency about? What is in my food? Where did my food come from? Is my food safe? Is my food healthy? Is the food I want affordable? Is my food environmentally friendly? This is just a short list of the types of questions that a consumer has when in the store. Some of the things that are very front and center in North America right now are on this list. I've already talked about clean labels. That has become a major push. Organic foods, local sourcing, gluten-free, GMO labeling, antibiotic-free, added sugars, natural claims, and health claims. One of the things I want to spend just a minute about is talking about antibiotic-free. This is one of the things in North America that has become a very big deal over the last couple of years. This relates to the use of antibiotics in food animals. I think many people will already know that in the 1950s, there were groups who were able to show that if you fed small levels of antibiotics to animals, healthy animals, they grow much faster. They put on weight very quickly. So the food industry understood that, and they started to use low levels of antibiotics, particularly in poultry, chickens, and pork. The end result was that the industry just changed overnight. Animals literally grew 20, 30% larger in half the time. Very dramatic. What nobody realized was this vast use of antibiotics was going to drive towards antibiotic resistance. So bacteria that we deal with every day as humans that cause pneumonia, cause ear infections, cause meningitis, cause wound infections, the antibiotics don't work. Why? Because the bacteria are resistant. Why are the bacteria resistant? Part of it is because of the way we use antibiotics. Not to blame all on the food industry, human use of antibiotics is just as much of a problem. But the end result was a push towards banning antibiotic use in food animals, which now in the United States is in place. United States growers cannot use antibiotics in food animals for growth promotion. They can use it to treat sick animals, but not for growth promotion. Consumers in the United States have said we want to eat meat and poultry that has never been exposed to an antibiotic. So even if that chicken was sick as a small pullet, or the pig was sick, was given antibiotics, we don't want to eat it. No antibiotics ever is what is used. And this has become a major initiative with the food industry, the meat and poultry industry especially. And this has been entirely driven by consumers. It's become a huge marketing push. And meat and poultry companies are able to charge extra for the food they sell if they can put on the label antibiotic-free. We're going to talk in a little bit in the next few slides about some of the tools that are used in America around transparency itself. How do we actually look at, communicate transparency? So I want to talk a little bit about some of these different areas, QR codes, loyalty cards, company apps, etc. So let's get into these a bit. I think we're all very familiar with QR codes. We know what they are. Get out our phone, we scan a QR code, and it gives us information, takes us to a website. Consumers are starting to use these, but interestingly, this technology has been around for a long time, and it has not got a lot of traction. It's moved a little bit, but not a long way. But if it's used well, it can give information about supply chain, it can give details on ingredients, nutrition facts, cooking suggestions, and health options. When this first came into the United States, the QR codes, there was a dairy industry that was very interested in pushing this and using QR codes to demonstrate to consumers when they pick up a dairy product, cheese or butter, milk, they could scan the QR code and they would see a picture of the cow that the milk came from. What was interesting, if you scan the QR codes in different products in different cities, it was always the same cow. So that was a very, very productive animal. So then consumers say, well, it's the same animal, so we don't trust you. So we have to be very careful with these kinds of technologies. They're very powerful, but consumers aren't stupid. And they will look at this and say, well, no, this same animal is now producing millions of gallons of milk a day. It's just not possible. So QR codes are very interesting technology, but they really haven't got a lot of traction. But I think they've got a lot of potential because technologically they are very doable. A lot of people in Taiwan have smartphones. They can scan them. The apps are available. So I think this is an area we should look at more as a way to maintain this education that I began my talk with. We're teaching children about nutrition. Can we use technology like this to help them to continue to track what's going on in their food? Loyalty cards, very common again in North America. These are often used to provide discounts, to track purchases, information about offers, information about recalls. Often, when a company like Costco has issued a recall, they know exactly which one of us bought which product. And they will call in North America. I don't know whether they do that in Taiwan. But in North America, if you've bought a product that's been recalled, they will phone you. And they will tell you, David, that cheese that you bought last week is being recalled. Throw it away. Usually say, it's too late, I've already eaten it, am I going to die? So there's mixed blessings around that. But loyalty cards are another method in which the food world is in touch with its users. Again, an opportunity for transparency. Company apps. This is from a company that I do a lot of work with. They're called Wawa. It's a convenience store on the East Coast of the United States. And they've developed a very sophisticated app. Again, it's focused on marketing. It's around looking at ways to pay, get the rewards, track your purchases, look at gas prices. But again, it's a tool to push out information. Again, smartphones, leveraging technology. This is the sort of the QR codes, the smartphones. This is something that our elementary school kids, when they move into middle school, are going to be all about. They're going to love it because it's a phone-driven app. We've got to make it not too nerdy, not too sciencey. Maybe it's got to have a game on it or something. I don't know, but there's tools. What about labeling? How does labeling work? Well, let me take a minute or two to talk about labeling. Two ways to approach this, two examples. One is the nutrition facts panel, which I know you have on all your foods in Taiwan. And the other example would be a color-coded system, a traffic light system. You know, in the traffic light, it's very conceptually simple. We've got a healthy choice, which is green. We have an unhealthy or a less healthy choice, which is red, and something in the middle, which is yellow. Very simple concept. So we've got simple concept, and we've got complexity on the nutrition facts panel. In the United States, every food has to have a facts panel. It's just an example of one that I pulled up. And you can see here it shows the number of calories per serving. It shows the protein. We've got here essentially 8 servings in this container. What's a serving size? 2/3 of a cup. We've got 230 calories. Here's the fat, the saturated fat, the cholesterol, the sodium. So consumers will look at this and they'll say, I don't know what this means. Consumers in the United States understand that calories, too many calories means you gain weight. They get that. But they do not understand how much fat should I eat, how much sodium should I eat. So while this is a classic example of the regulators and the science putting the facts up there, it's pretty useless in terms of changing behaviors. And when I was at the Food and Drug Administration, we developed a program to try to make this understandable to children. And the idea was, and I wish I should have brought some of this with me, what we did at the Food and Drug Administration is we partnered with the Cartoon Network. And we took the facts panel and we turned it into little characters with the Cartoon Network to try to get to children. I think I had more fun with it than the kids did because it wasn't very effective. Probably because it was from the Food and Drug Administration that it's got to be bad. But the point was, let's take this complexity, let's work with the Cartoon Network and have some fun with it. So it was a good idea, but it didn't quite pan out the way we were hoping. But when you look at the FDA website, They have pages and pages and pages of information about how to interpret this. So it's very complicated, but it's very complete. So consumers find it hard to understand this nutrition facts panel. It's very transparent, but it isn't very helpful. They don't know how to use it to promote health. So, as I pointed out just in the last slide, there is a website there which you can go to and you can read all about how to interpret the nutrition facts panel. So what about the traffic light system? This is something that has gained a lot of traction in the UK and in parts of Europe. It has not gained traction in the United States. Almost never do you see a package with a traffic light on it. But the concept here is pretty straightforward. We have essentially an example where we've got medium, low, medium, and high for the different things. So the calories are okay, the sugar is low, and the saturated fat is high. So a consumer can pick this up and say, well, I need to reduce my fat. I'm going to go with labels which are green. I need to reduce my salt, my sodium, so I'm going to go with salt contents that are green. Very simple concept. This has been extended to the facts panel, and this isn't very easy to read, but you'll see there that there's red bars, and there's green bars, and there's yellow bars. So it's trying to merge the two. But what has gained the most traction in the United States is straightforward information. Let's go back a slide. This is a bit more science-y. It's got numbers, and to me this is very simple. But what the American consumer wants is tell me low sodium, low fat in writing. So the front of packaging labeling, FOP that we call it, front of packaging labeling, is all about, in the United States, very clear messages. You buy a food and it says on it, low sodium, low fat. And I think it's partly because Americans simply don't even want to bother with this. It's like, and speaking of somebody who's lived in the United States for 30 years, I think Americans want life really simple. And I think we have to look in Taiwan. Is that what works for Taiwan? Is it a nutrition facts panel? Is it a traffic light? Is it a statement? Is it a combination of all three? Because that's where we need to go for transparency. And I don't know what's going to work, but I think there's a lot of people in this room that together we can figure it out. And that's really our mission. That's why we are giving up our afternoon to talk about these things. Okay, so key points here when we think about transparency. Do companies have all the information? Consumers want the information. They want to know where it came from. Does it have this ingredient, that ingredient? Do they even have it? Do they want to share that information? Because there may be some things in there that they don't want to share. So we need to build trust. And that's really what transparency is about. At the end of the day, is because why do we even have this question about transparency? It means that we can see through. In English, to be transparent means we can see through, versus opaque, where we cannot see through. Opaque, we have a barrier. Transparent, we have a vision. Why do we even need it? Because we don't trust. So part of our challenge isn't just to be transparent, but is to build trust as well. Final thoughts. My first few slides demonstrated complexity, supply chains. It's easy for us to say to the food industry, yeah, just be transparent. Tell us what's on the labels. Those complex supply chains can be very difficult to provide accurate information. Consumers don't trust us. They don't trust science, yet they want more information. Rightly so. Consumers deserve to know. We're all consumers. We all want to know what we're eating. And food companies, whether they're at the retail end or wherever they are, their reputations are at risk if communications with consumers are poor. So when food companies go quiet, they hide things, or they are perceived to hide things, So we move from transparency and vision to opaqueness. We lose trust. And that damages our reputations with consumers from a food company perspective. So the reality here is we talk about transparency, and many in the room I know are teachers, consumers, people who are interested from one end of this. But this has to be a team effort. We can't be transparent unless we can bring in all the players, the supply chain, the manufacturers, the farms, and everybody through. And to go full circle here, that was the delightful thing yesterday, watching the children. They were learning where the rice grew, what pesticides did to the local animals if you used them, how to harvest it, how to use it, how to grow it. And then when you've got the leftovers, what to do with it. It was absolutely fantastic program. So with that, I look forward to questions later and engaging you all in conversations about how do we fix this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Acheson. Thank you for your sharing. 相当感谢艾奇森博士所带来的分享哦。